Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we're diving into something that I think is on all of our minds these days.
Yeah.
How to really get your ideas across.
Mm.
In a world that's just overflowing with information, how do you cut through all that noise, all
Hmm.
those distractions, and make people really hear what you have to say?
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad that you're here to help break this down with me today.
Happy to be here.
So,
Yeah.
to help us with this, we've got some insights from the book
Right.
To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink.
That's right.
And that title alone is kind of intriguing, To
Yeah.
Sell is Human.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the fact that this is something we all do, whether we realize it or not.
Absolutely.
We're always trying to persuade people,
Yeah.
get them to see our point of view
Right.
or take some kind of action.
Yeah. And you're right. That title, I think, is one of the most important things about the book.
Yeah.
Because it really is
Yeah.
trying to reframe how we think about sales
Right.
and how we think about persuasion.
Exactly.
And not this sort of icky thing that we all have to do every once in a while.
Yeah.
Maybe when we have to go buy a car or something like that.
Right.
It's part of who we are as humans.
Yeah.
It's part of how we interact
Absolutely.
with other people.
And I love that this book doesn't just talk about, you know, the kind of sleazy used car salesman tactics.
Right.
It really dives into the psychology of
Mhm.
persuasion
Absolutely.
and the ethics of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Pink does a good job of that.
Yeah.
Really thinking about, how do we do this in a way that feels good,
Right.
that feels authentic,
Yes.
that builds relationships,
Exactly.
rather than just, trying to get someone to do
All
something
right.
that benefits us.
Yeah. So our mission for this deep dive is to really extract some of those key insights.
Mm-hmm.
Those actionable strategies that we can all use in our own lives, whether we're pitching a project at work
Mhm.
or advocating for a cause, or even just trying to convince our family to try a new restaurant.
Right. That's right.
So let's jump right in.
Okay.
One of the first things that the book talks about is how the concept of pitching has really evolved.
Yeah.
We've all heard of the classic elevator pitch.
Right. The 30-second spiel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That quick spiel that you're supposed to be able to deliver if you
Yeah.
happen to bump into a CEO in an elevator.
Exactly.
But I have to wonder, does that even work anymore?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
what Pink is getting at is
Yeah.
the classic elevator pitch is kind of
Yeah.
on its way out.
Yeah. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Open offices, constant notifications, everyone's attention is just pulled in a million directions.
That's right.
It does make you wonder if that old elevator pitch is actually extinct.
It might as well be.
Yeah.
It's just too rigid,
Yeah.
too one-sided, I think,
Mhm.
for this
Yeah.
fast-paced world we live in.
So the elevator pitch is out. What's in?
Right.
Is there a new secret formula?
Well, actually, Pink gives us
Secret-
6 successors to the elevator pitch,
Okay.
and each one is tailored for kind of a specific purpose.
So it's not just a one-size-fits-all.
Not at all.
Okay.
It's like different tools
Okay.
in your
Right.
persuasion toolbox.
6 new pitches. I'm all ears.
All right, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So the first one is called the one-word pitch,
The one-word pitch.
and this is all about finding that single word
Okay.
that instantly captures your idea.
One word that seems almost impossible.
Right.
How can you possibly convey a whole idea
Yeah.
with just one word?
Well, let me ask you this.
Okay.
If I say Google,
Yeah.
what one word comes to mind?
Search.
Search.
Yeah.
Right? It's about evoking this whole universe
Yeah.
of associations with just one powerful word.
So it's not just about the literal meaning of the word.
Right.
It's about all the things that it makes people think of.
It's about the feeling,
Yeah.
the emotion,
Yeah.
the experience.
And the book actually calls this
yes,
one-word equity.
one-word equity.
I love that term.
Yeah. And it's about building that up over time.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
Google didn't just stumble upon that word search.
Yeah.
They spent years and years
Right.
and millions of dollars
Yeah.
building up that association.
So, another example might be
right.
MasterCard and Priceless.
Priceless. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this is so powerful,
Mm-hmm.
because in a world
Yeah.
of information overload,
Yeah.
it forces you to
Yeah.
just crystallize your message,
Yeah.
get it down to its essence.
And make it really easy for people to remember.
It travels lighter and faster.
Okay, one-word pitch added to my toolbox. What's next?
All right, next up we have
Okay.
the question pitch.
Okay, the question pitch.
And this might surprise you a little bit.
Yeah.
Because instead of
Yeah.
stating your idea directly, you pose a thought-provoking question.
Really?
Right.
Questions instead of statements.
Yeah.
That's kind of counterintuitive,
Right.
but I'm intrigued.
I think our instinct is to sort of tell people what we think,
Yeah.
but actually there's research
Yeah.
that shows that
Mm-hmm.
when you frame things as a question,
Right.
it can be incredibly effective.
Okay.
So, for example,
Yeah.
Pink talks about this study
Okay.
where students
Mm-hmm.
were presented with arguments
Okay.
about university graduation requirements.
Okay.
And when those arguments were
Yeah.
phrased as questions,
Interesting.
they were much more persuasive.
So instead of telling people what to think,
Right.
you ask a question that gets them thinking.
Exactly.
Okay. But are there any caveats here?
What?
Can I just ask any question? It'll magically work.
That's where it gets a little tricky.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the question has to lead to a strong argument.
Okay. Yeah.
So, for example,
Okay.
he uses Ronald Reagan
Okay.
and his famous question,
Yeah.
are you better off now
Right.
than you were 4 years ago?
Which is such a classic.
Yeah, it's such a good question
Yeah.
because it really
Yeah.
made people think.
Yeah.
And at the time,
Mm-hmm.
the economic situation
Right.
was, for many people,
Yeah.
demonstrably worse.
Right. So the question actually aligns
Yes.
with the reality
Exactly.
that people were experiencing.
And so when Jimmy Carter
Okay.
tried to use a similar tactic,
Huh?
it kind of backfired
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
people didn't necessarily feel like
Right.
things were worse.
So it's not about trickery.
No.
It's about asking a question
Right.
that aligns with a truth
Mm-hmm.
that your audience can connect with.
Absolutely. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the key things
Yeah.
to keep in mind
Abs-
with all of these pitches.
I'm seeing how much strategy there is to this.
Yeah.
It's not just about the words themselves.
It's about
It's about
Well,
understanding your audience.
Yeah.
And the
the context.
Yeah.
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 All right. So question pitch. What's next?
Okay, next up we have the rhyming pitch.
The rhyming pitch.
This is about using the power of rhyme
Okay.
to make your message
Mm-hmm.
more memorable and persuasive.
You know, I have to admit, this one sounds a little gimmicky to me.
It does.
Yeah. But I'm willing to be convinced.
Okay.
So tell me more.
So think about jingles
Okay. Yeah.
or slogans.
Yeah.
Like they stick in your head
I do.
for a reason,
Yeah.
right? There's actually research
Yeah.
that shows that we perceive rhyming phrases as more accurate
Really?
simply because the rhyme makes them easier to process.
So our brains are kind of wired to
Yeah.
trust things.
Yeah, But-
Sound good.
I think so.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I never would have guessed that.
And so
Yeah.
Pink uses the example
Uh,
of Haribo.
okay, the candy company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kids and grown-ups love it. So the happy world of Haribo.
Okay. Well,
And that's been successful
wow.
in multiple languages.
See, now it's stuck in my head,
Right.
so it works.
It does work.
Okay, I'm starting to see the power of rhyme.
All right.
All right, remember, pitches that rhyme are more sublime.
That's a good one.
I'll have to work on my rhyming skills.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
All right. Next, we're going into something
Okay.
that I think you probably use every day.
Okay.
The subject line pitch.
Wait, my emails are pitches.
They are.
I never thought of it that way.
Every email is a plea for someone's attention.
That's true.
And that subject line
Yeah.
is your first impression.
Okay.
So think about your own inbox.
Yeah.
What makes you open an email,
Definitely not something that sounds spammy.
right?
I'm more likely to open something that's either super relevant
Hmm.
to my work or something that just sparks my curiosity.
Exactly.
What is this about?
So the research shows
Yeah.
that the most effective subject lines
Mm-hmm.
tap into either utility
Okay.
or curiosity,
Gotcha.
and then being very specific.
Okay.
So instead of just saying
Yeah.
project update,
Right, which is so vague.
yeah, try something like
Yeah.
3 ways to boost Project X's impact this quarter.
Okay, that's much better.
Right.
Yeah.
It's specific.
Yeah.
It's intriguing.
Yeah.
And it tells me exactly
Right.
what I'm going to get.
Yeah, wow. I'm definitely going to rethink my subject line strategy.
Yeah, I think we all should.
Okay.
So the next pitch we're going to talk about is the Twitter pitch.
Twitter, the land of hashtags and hot takes.
That's right.
But seriously, I can see how
Yeah.
having a strong Twitter pitch could be so valuable these days.
Right.
But isn't a lot of Twitter just noise?
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of it is.
Yeah.
But there are certain types of tweets
Yeah.
that really stand out.
Okay, so what are those?
So the first one is questions,
Okay.
engaging questions
Okay.
that really get people thinking and responding.
Okay.
The second is new information,
Okay.
something that people haven't heard before.
Right.
Some insight that's really valuable.
Gotcha.
And then the third one
Okay.
is self-promotion,
Okay.
but self-promotion that offers value.
Okay.
So it's not just, hey, look at me, look at me.
Right.
It's, hey, I created this resource
Yeah.
that I think you'll find helpful.
Okay, so it's about giving more than you're taking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's not just theory.
Mm-hmm.
Pink actually talks about
Okay.
the Tippy College of Business.
Okay.
And they started incorporating
Yeah.
a Twitter pitch contest
Really?
into their MBA application process.
Wait, they're asking potential MBA students to pitch themselves on Twitter?
That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What kind of tweets were actually working?
So the winning tweets were able to showcase the applicant's personality,
Okay.
their skills, their goals,
Mm-hmm.
all within that character limit.
It's about making every word count.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired to up my Twitter game.
Right.
What's the final pitch?
Okay, the last one is
Okay.
the Pixar pitch.
The Pixar pitch. Now we're talking.
Yeah,
I love Pixar movies.
I do too.
So how do we apply that movie magic
Right.
to our own pitches?
Well, it's all about structure.
Okay.
Pixar uses this 6-sentence framework
Okay.
to create these compelling narratives.
Okay, I'm listening.
So it goes like this.
Yeah.
Once upon a time,
Okay.
there was blank
Blank.
every day.
Okay.
Blank.
Mm-hmm.
One day,
Okay.
blank.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Blank.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Blank.
Okay.
Until finally,
Okay.
Yeah.
Blank. It's simple but powerful.
yes.
It really forces you to just distill your message and
Right.
create that clear narrative arc.
Yes. And they even give an example
Oh, they do?
in the book
Okay.
of how you can use this framework
Okay.
to summarize Finding Nemo.
Really? So they took a whole movie
A whole movie.
and boiled it down to this 6-sentence structure.
That's right.
Okay, tell me more.
Okay, so here it is.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, there was a widowed fish named Marlin
Yep.
who was extremely protective of his only son, Nemo.
Okay.
Every day,
Yeah.
Marlin warned Nemo of the ocean's dangers
Okay.
and implored him not to swim far away.
Right.
One day, in an act of defiance, Nemo ignores his father's warnings
Mm-hmm.
and swims into the open water.
Classic Nemo.
Because of that,
Yeah.
he is captured by a diver
Yeah.
and ends up as a pet
Mm.
in the fish tank
Yeah.
of a dentist in Sydney.
Right.
Because of that,
Mm-hmm.
Marlin sets off on a journey to recover Nemo,
Yeah.
enlisting the help of other sea creatures along the way.
Right.
Till finally Marlin and Nemo find each other, reunite, and learn that love depends on trust.
Okay, they fit the whole story in there.
I know.
Wow, that's impressive.
Right.
So how would we use this for a real-world pitch?
Okay, so they give the example
Okay.
of a nonprofit
Okay.
that developed an at-home HIV test kit.
Okay.
And so their Pixar pitch goes like this.
Okay.
Once upon a time, there was a health crisis
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
haunting many parts of Africa.
Okay.
Every day, thousands of people would die of AIDS
Mm-hmm.
and HIV-related illnesses,
Yeah.
often because they didn't know they carried the virus.
Okay.
One day,
Yeah.
we developed an inexpensive
Okay.
home HIV kit
Mm-hmm.
that allowed people to test themselves with a simple saliva swab.
Okay.
Because of that,
Mm-hmm.
more people got tested.
Okay.
Because of that, those with the infection sought treatment
Right.
and took measures to avoid infecting others
Mm-hmm.
until finally this menacing disease slowed its spread
Wow.
and more people lived longer lives.
It tells a complete story. It
Yeah.
highlights the problem, the solution,
Yeah,
and even kind of tugs at the heartstrings a little bit.
it does.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this could really be applied
Yeah.
to so many different things.
And get this, they
Mhm.
even use this framework
Yeah.
to summarize the entire book itself.
Really a book summarizing itself?
I know.
Using a storytelling technique from a movie studio?
I know.
That's amazing.
It's pretty meta.
It's very meta.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to hear this.
All right. So
Lay it on me.
once upon a time,
Okay,
only some people were in sales.
okay.
Every day they sold stuff.
Mhm.
We did stuff.
Yeah.
And everyone was happy.
Right.
One day,
Mm.
everything changed.
Uh-oh.
All of us ended up in sales.
Right.
And sales changed from a world of caveat emptor
Okay.
to caveat vendor.
I love that.
Yeah.
Buyer beware
Right.
to seller beware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because of that,
Mm-hmm.
we had to learn the new ABCs,
Okay.
attunement,
Mm-hmm.
buoyancy.
Clarity.
Right.
Because of that,
Yeah.
we had to learn some new skills
Okay.
to pitch,
Mhm.
to improvise,
Okay.
and to serve.
Right.
Until finally, we realized that selling isn't some grim accommodation to a merciless world of commerce.
Okay.
It's part of who we are,
Right.
and therefore,
Yeah.
something we can do better by being more human.
That's a great way to sum it up. It really captures the
Mhm.
essence of the book
Mm-hmm.
and this idea that persuasion
Yeah,
is something that we all do
it is.
and that we can actually do better.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've covered these 6 successors to the elevator pitch,
Mhm.
but I'm guessing there's more to mastering persuasion
There is.
than just these 6 pitches, right?
Absolutely.
There's got to be.
Yeah.
So what else does the book have to offer?
Well, Pink goes on to talk about
I don't
some
know.
additional strategies to make your pitches even more effective.
Even better.
Yeah.
All right. I am ready to level up my persuasion skills.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so those 6 pitches are a great foundation.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yeah.
There's more to it
Yeah.
than just mastering those different formats.
Sure.
So Pink actually goes into
Yeah.
some additional strategies
Okay.
to make your pitches even more powerful.
Okay. I'm ready. I'm ready to level up.
Okay.
Give me those persuasion skills.
All right. So one of the things he emphasizes is
Yeah.
the importance of practice.
Oh, of course. Practice. Right.
Yeah. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon
Right.
without training.
No, I would probably collapse
Yeah,
after the first mile.
exactly. So
Yeah.
how do we train
Right.
for persuasion?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, it's about tailoring your practice
Okay.
to each type of pitch.
Gotcha.
So for the one-word pitch,
Yeah.
try starting with a longer description
Okay.
and gradually whittling it down.
Right.
But to that one essential word.
Okay.
For the question pitch,
Yeah.
brainstorm questions
Yeah.
that highlight the strongest points
Okay.
of your argument.
Gotcha.
And for the rhyming pitch, well,
Yeah.
get ready to have some fun
Yeah.
with a rhyming dictionary.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
Those are great practical tips. I can already see myself, brainstorming rhymes
Right.
and testing out different one-word pitches.
Exactly.
What about for the other 3?
Okay.
The subject line, the Twitter,
Right.
and the Pixar pitch.
So for subject lines,
Yeah.
analyze your own inbox.
Right.
When you send emails,
Mm-hmm.
are you appealing to utility or curiosity?
Okay.
If not,
Yeah.
rewrite them to
Yeah.
be more engaging.
Okay.
For Twitter, aim for pitches
Okay.
within 120 characters
Okay. What? 120.
so that others can easily retweet it.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. And for the Pixar pitch,
Mm-hmm.
really focus on sticking to that 6-sentence structure
Right.
and perfecting that narrative arc.
This is like having a personal pitching coach.
It is.
I'm taking notes.
Good.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Pink also talks about the importance of clarity and purpose.
Right, because it's not just about,
Right.
being able to deliver the words.
Right.
You have to know what you're actually trying to achieve.
Exactly. So before you even start
Yeah.
crafting your pitch,
Okay.
ask yourself these 3 questions.
Okay. I'm ready.
What do you want your audience to know?
Okay.
What do you want them to feel?
Okay.
And most importantly, what do you want them to do?
Oh, those are powerful questions.
Yeah.
It's like having a roadmap for my pitch.
Right.
Okay.
Making sure it leads to a clear destination.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just kind of
You're just wandering around.
wandering around
Yeah.
aimlessly,
Aimlessly.
roadlessly. Okay, so roadmap and destination.
Yes.
Got it. One of the other things he talks about is
Okay.
becoming a pitch connoisseur.
A pitch connoisseur. What's that even mean?
So it's about
Yeah.
start collecting great pitches
Okay.
that you encounter in daily life.
Okay.
So it could be a catchy tagline,
Okay.
a compelling request,
Mm-hmm.
even a heartfelt plea.
So I should be paying attention
Yeah.
to how people are trying to persuade me
Yes.
all the time.
Be more aware
Okay.
of the pitches around you.
That sounds like a fun challenge.
It is kind of a fun treasure hunt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to start noticing pitches everywhere.
Yeah, billboards, commercials,
Yeah.
conversations with friends.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Okay.
Another tip he gives is record yourself
Oh, no.
practicing your pitches.
I hate listening to my own voice.
I know it can be a little awkward,
Yeah.
but it's one of the best ways
Okay.
to identify areas for improvement.
So I can catch myself, rambling on.
Or using filler words. Yeah. All those bad habits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So record myself.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Any other tips?
Think visually
Okay.
whenever possible.
Yeah.
Add a visual element
Okay.
to your pitch.
Gotcha.
So it could be a photo, an illustration,
Mm-hmm.
a short video, even a prop.
Okay.
Something to really
Yeah.
bring your pitch to life.
Because we live in such a visual world.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Okay, so visuals, visuals, visuals.
Yes.
Got it.
All right.
Okay, so we've got our toolkit of pitches. We've got all these strategies to make them even better.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a question for you.
Okay.
We've been talking about clarity
Yes.
in our pitches.
Right.
But what about clarity in our own thinking?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get so stuck in our routines, in our perspectives, that we miss the bigger picture.
Right. It's like we're looking at the world through a blurry lens.
Yeah. So how do we sharpen our focus?
Yeah. So one strategy is to introduce a jolt of the unfamiliar.
A jolt of the unfamiliar.
Akin to your routine.
Okay.
So it could be something as simple as sitting in a different spot.
Right.
During a meeting.
Okay.
Taking a new route to work. Trying a new type of cuisine.
So just shaking things up a little bit.
Yeah, breaking out of those mental ruts.
I love that because it's often those little disruptions that can spark new insights.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's not just about mastering the pitches themselves.
Right.
It's about mastering.
It's about mastering our thinking.
Yeah.
And our perception.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so jolt of the unfamiliar.
Yes.
Got it. What else?
So another key to clarity is becoming a curator of information.
Okay, a curator of information.
Yeah, because we're bombarded with so much data these days.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Totally.
Right? And as learners, you know, we can't just passively consume information.
Right.
We need to actively seek out the most valuable and relevant information.
Okay.
Organize it in a way that makes sense to us, and then share it with others.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's like being a museum curator.
Yes.
But for information.
For information, exactly.
Instead of artifacts.
Yeah. I like that.
So Pink actually gives a simple 3-step process.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Seek, sense, and share.
Seek, sense, and share. Okay.
So first,
Yeah.
identify your areas of interest.
Okay.
And create a list of reliable sources.
Okay. So like trusted websites.
Yes.
Journals, people in my network.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then set aside time
Yeah.
to regularly scan those sources
Okay.
for interesting and insightful information.
Yeah.
And finally,
Yeah.
organize that information in a way that works for you.
Okay, so it could be like an annotated list of links, a blog post.
Even just a well-organized folder.
Exactly.
My computer.
As long as it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And then most importantly, share it with your network.
So that's where the sharing comes in.
That's the share.
Okay, and sharing those insights.
Yes.
Wouldn't that also be a form of
It is.
the Twitter pitch that we talked about?
Yes.
Because you're sharing valuable information.
Exactly.
Okay, so it all ties together.
It does.
Okay, I'm inspired.
Yeah.
I'm going to up my curating game.
All right.
Okay, so we've talked about curating information. What are some other ways to kind of sharpen our thinking?
So one of the things that Pink emphasizes
Yeah.
is the power of asking better questions.
Oh.
Because in a world where information is so readily available,
Yeah.
the ability to ask the right questions
Yeah.
is more valuable than simply providing answers.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So it's like we're moving from being information providers.
Yes. To being facilitators of discovery.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Okay, so how can we get better?
Okay, so he suggests a 3-part technique.
Okay.
So first, brainstorm as many questions as possible about the topic without judgment or editing.
Okay, just let it flow.
Just let it flow.
Okay.
Then categorize each question as either closed-ended, requiring a simple yes or no, or open-ended, inviting a more detailed response.
Gotcha.
And finally, prioritize your top 3 questions and refine them to be as clear and thought-provoking as possible.
Okay, so it's both quantity and quality when it comes to questions.
That's right.
Okay.
Another technique is the 5 whys.
Oh, the 5 whys. I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Where you ask why.
5 times in a row.
Yeah, 5 times in a row.
To drill down to the root cause.
Yeah. It can be really revealing. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And another strategy is to find the 1%.
The 1%.
the essential core of an idea or problem.
Right.
And Pink argues that if you can understand and clearly explain that 1%, you're well on your way to becoming a persuasive communicator.
That reminds me of the one-word pitch.
It does.
It does.
Where it's all about distilling it down to that essence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
In this deep dive.
Yes.
We've learned about 6 new types of pitches.
Right.
We've explored strategies to make them more effective. We've even delved into how to sharpen our own thinking and see problems more clearly.
Absolutely.
You've been a fantastic teacher.
Well, you've been a fantastic student.
I feel like I've gained a whole new level of understanding about the art of persuasion.
That's great to hear.
But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your final thoughts.
Okay.
What's the one key takeaway
Okay.
that you want listeners to remember from this deep dive?
You know, it's amazing to think about how much the whole idea of pitching has really changed.
It really has.
You know, we started out talking about how the old elevator pitch is fading away.
Yeah.
But even these 6 new pitches,
Right.
you know, the one word, the question, the rhyming, the subject line, the Twitter, and the Pixar, they all kind of boil down to that core principle, conciseness.
Conciseness, you know.
Get to the point.
Get to the point.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that these new pitches
are
actually embracing the constraints of our modern world.
Right.
You know, shrinking attention spans.
Yeah.
Information overload, social media.
All of it. Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
They're not obstacles.
They're opportunities for creativity.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's not about fighting against the current.
Right.
It's about learning to surf.
Yes.
Those waves of information.
Right.
Yeah. So we've explored all these different tools and strategies for persuasion.
We have.
But if there's one thing you want listeners to walk away with, what would it be?
You know, I think if we zoom out
and
look at the bigger picture, the most persuasive communicators aren't necessarily the ones with the slickest presentations or the loudest voices.
Right. It's not about being, you know, a fast talker.
It's not about being slick.
Yeah.
It's about being human.
Right.
Relatable. Authentic.
It's about connecting on a human level.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Pink does so well in the book.
Yeah.
Is he highlights this shift in how we think about sales and persuasion.
Right.
It's less about pushing products or agendas and more about solving problems.
Okay.
Creating value, making a genuine difference.
So it's about going beyond that transactional mindset and building something more meaningful.
Absolutely.
Something that benefits both sides.
Yeah.
It's like we're all in this together.
I think so.
Trying to figure out how to navigate this complex world.
This crazy world.
This crazy world.
And the better we can communicate and persuade,
the more equipped we'll be
to
make a positive impact.
I completely agree.
So it's not just about, you know, getting what you want. It's about making the world a better place.
I think so.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such an insightful conversation.
Yeah, it has.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for persuasion.
I'm glad to hear it.
And to everyone listening, we encourage you to experiment with these different approaches.
That's right.
Find what works for you. And remember, the most persuasive pitches come from a place of authenticity, empathy, and a genuine desire to connect.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, go forth and pitch with confidence.
Yes.